My mother kicked me out of a private jet. Not out of her house, not out of her will. Out of a flying jet, with the door open and the sky waiting for me. Tell me what kind of mother looks her only child in the eye and chooses money over her life. I remember the sound first. The wind was howling so loud it didn't even sound like wind anymore. It sounded like something alive, like it was screaming with me. My golden dress was snapping and twisting around my legs. My braids were in my face, and my fingers were digging into the cold metal near the door, trying to hold on to the inside of the plane, while the rest of my body hung over nothing. The clouds were everywhere, white and angry, rushing past, like they wanted to erase me, and above me, framed in that open doorway, was my mother, her hair perfect, her ears glittering with diamonds, eyes so cold, they didn't even look human in that moment, one hand holding a stack of papers, the other gripping the seat, her right leg pressed against my ribs like a lever. "Sign the papers." "Rachel," she shouted over the roar, her voice somehow cutting through the noise like a knife. "Sign them, and I'll pull you back in." My chest hurt. My arms were burning, but my voice still came out clear, because some lines you just don't cross, even if it kills you. "No, Mother." I choked out. "I'm not giving you what belongs to Dad." He trusted me. Her face hardened, like I'd insulted her, not refused to give away an empire. And for a second, we just stared at each other, me half in the air, her balanced safely inside the plane with her jewelry and her anger. And I swear I could see the decision cross her face like a shadow. Then she did it. She shifted her weight, lifted her leg, and kicked me. My fingers slipped, the metal tore at my skin. And suddenly there was no plane, no floor, no mother, just sky, just falling, just my own scream getting swallowed by the wind as the jet shrank above me. And the last thing I saw before everything turned white was her face in the doorway. Not horrified, not broken, not even conflicted, just greedy and furious that I'd rather die than sign. People always say that when you're about to die, your life flashes before your eyes, right, like a movie, like a highlight reel. But when I fell, it wasn't just my life. It was every warning my father ever gave me, every fight I'd heard behind closed doors, every little sign I tried to ignore, all lining up in my head as I dropped between the clouds. If it were you hanging out of that jet with the person who raised you, telling you to sell your soul to survive, what would you have done? Sign or let go? Let me start from this beginning, so you understand how we got from a house full of chandeliers to me falling out of the sky. My name is Rachel Collins. I'm my father's only child, and I grew up in a world people only see in movies. My father, Richard Collins, was one of the most successful businessmen in Africa. Hotels in city centers, oil companies in multiple countries, islands with his name on the sign. If you saw his portfolio on paper, you'd think he was carved out of steel and stone. But he wasn't like that with me. He was just Dad. Sitting on the balcony at night with a cup of tea, shirt sleeves rolled up, talking more about people and choices than about billions. "Rachel," he used to say, looking out at the city lights, "never let money rule your heart. People who worship money forget they have a soul." I'd nod, sometimes roll my eyes like any 20-something who thinks they've got time to figure it all out. And he'd just chuckle, pat my hand and say, "One day you'll remember this." You know how parents say that, and you just smile. Like, yeah, I get it. Even though you don't. Not really, yeah, that happened. My mother, Gloria, was a whole different story. She was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that walks into a room and everyone suddenly remembers. They have eyes tall, always dressed in gold, literally gold jewelry, gold shoes, gold purses, gold eyeliner. Like she wanted the world to know that money had kissed every inch of her life, even her perfume, smelled expensive, like you could hear the price tag. She knew how to charm people. She knew how to make anyone feel small or special with a single look. But behind that perfect smile, there was this hunger. Not for food, not for love, but for more. More status, more power, more things. With her name attached, it never ended. When my father was alive, the house wasn't peaceful. Most nights ended with raised voices behind walls that were too thin for the kind of secrets they were trying to hold. I'd sit on the stairs sometimes, knees tucked up, listening, even though I hated myself for listening. "Gloria, you've changed," my father would say. "Tired more than angry. This money has poisoned your heart. Don't blame me." "Richard," she'd snap back, "you made me taste luxury. Now you want me to go back to nothing?" Those words stuck to me even when I pretended they didn't, because there's a huge difference between loving comfort and needing it like oxygen. Then one day it happened, the shift. He got sick. Not slowly, not in a way that let you prepare or plan. One week he was at a business meeting, the next he was too weak to walk up the stairs without help. The doctors used all their big words: mysterious, illness, sudden decline, aggressive. But none of those words told me why the strongest man I knew was shrinking in front of me. Within a month he was gone. The house filled up with people in black. People crying in corners. People saying things like, "He was a good man, and he'll be missed," while holding plates of food they didn't need. I floated through all of it like a ghost, barely hearing anything, just trying to make sense of the quiet where his voice should have been. My mother sat on the main couch with dark sunglasses on. Inside hands folded over a small gold purse. No tears, no trembling lip, no shaking shoulders, just stillness. And I told myself maybe she was grieving in her own way, because the alternative was too ugly to name. Then came the will. The lawyer's office was cold polished. One of those places where you feel like the chairs cost more than your education. My mother sat beside me, straight-backed, her hand resting on that same gold purse. Nails, perfect lipstick, perfect heart, completely unreadable. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, opened a folder, and read in that formal voice. They get trained to use the kind that feels like it bounces off your skin instead of sinking in. According to Mr. Richard Collins's last wishes, he said all his properties, businesses, and accounts shall be transferred to his daughter Rachel Collins until she turns 30 years old. Everything stopped. I felt my mother's hand go stiff, like someone had flipped a switch inside her. Everything she cut in her voice suddenly sharp, like broken glass, all the fake softness gone. "Yes, ma'am." The lawyer nodded everything until Rachel turns 30. You know those moments in life where you don't fully understand what just happened, but your body knows, before your brain catches up. My stomach dropped, my heart sped up, and something in my mind whispered, nothing will be the same after this. Sitting in that over-decorated office, my life split into 2 parts before that sentence. And after it, before it, I was a daughter after it. I was something else. Something my mother now saw as a wall between her and what she wanted. At first I tried to believe I was wrong. In the days after the will reading, she changed, but not in the way you might think she became. Nice. Suddenly, she was cooking herself instead of letting the staff do it. Bringing me plates of food, sitting at the edge of my bed. Smoothing my hair. Calling me my darling girl, asking if I was sleeping, if I wanted to talk. Grief can make you stupid. It can make you cling to anything that feels like comfort. And for a second, I thought maybe losing Dad softened her. Maybe that warning he gave her about money sinking into her heart finally hit. Then I heard the phone call. It was late. The house was quiet. I got up to grab water from the kitchen as I passed her room. The door was slightly open. Her voice floated out in this low, focused tone I knew too well. "Yes. Yes," she was saying. I'll get her to sign the transfer papers. She's too naive to understand what's going on. I froze. Transfer papers naive her. I backed up, my heart pounding, every little kindness from the last days, rearranging itself in my head, like puzzle pieces suddenly forming a different picture. I went back to my room, sat on the floor, and cried into my hands. Because it's one thing to lose a father. It's another to realize your mother sees you as a signature. From that night on, I watched everything. Men in suits started visiting more. Not family friends. Not Dad's usual people. These were different. They spoke in low voices in the study. Left quickly, my mother started locking doors. She never used to lock. Tucking folders under her arm whenever I walked in, whispering on the phone, and hanging up as soon as she heard my footsteps. Then one morning she walked into my room carrying a neat stack of papers, face bright, voice sweet. "Rachel, sweetheart," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I've been talking with your father's advisors. There's so much work to do to keep everything running, and you're so young, I don't want the stress to crush you." My eyes dropped to the papers before she even finished the words at the top. Hit me like a soot slap. "Property transfer agreement." "What kind of papers are those?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Just some small transfer forms," she said, waving one perfectly manicured hand. "Nothing serious. It's just so I can manage the businesses for you until you're older. You sign here, and everything stays safe. That's all." My chest tightened. My father's words came back to me, that warning not to let money run my heart. The way he had looked at her when he said it, like he had already seen the end of the story. "Mother," I said. Slowly, forcing myself to meet her eyes, Dad trusted me with these properties. I'm not signing them away. The temperature in the room dropped. Or maybe that was just her face, because the smile vanished so fast, it was like it had never been real. "Rachel," she said, voice turning flat and cold. "You are making a mistake." "I'm not signing." I repeated, my throat tight, but my voice steady. She stared at me, the anger rising like a tide, then stood up sharply, the mattress dipping as she moved and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the mirror on my wall shook. From that moment on, there were no more sweet breakfasts, no more gentle questions, no more pretending. She shut down emotionally, stopped eating with me, stopped speaking unless it was necessary, and started traveling even more in and out early. Flights, late arrivals, never really there, except her presence still filled every room. It felt like living with a stranger who had my mother's face. About 2 months later, she knocked on my door early one morning, her voice level too calm. "Get dressed," she said. "We're going on a short trip." I don't know why I went. Maybe because some part of me still wanted to believe there was something left between us. Some tiny bridge we could rebuild, maybe, because grief doesn't just make you stupid. It makes you hopeful in all the wrong places. We drove to the private airport in silence. No music, no conversation. Just the hum of the engine, and the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. A small white jet was waiting on the tarmac, sleek and arrogant. And for a second, I let myself imagine she was taking me somewhere to talk to, clear the air, to say something human. In the air, once we leveled off, and the seatbelt signs went off, she turned her head and looked at me with this half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Do you have any idea what your father's empire is worth?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, and I don't care. I just want peace." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Peace doesn't buy jets, Rachel. Peace doesn't pay for diamonds. Don't be naive like your father." She reached into her purse and pulled out the same stack of papers, and a golden pen slid them toward me across the table. "Sign these," she said. "Right now." "No," I said, my voice low but clear. "I already told you I'm not signing." The smile disappeared completely. She stood up, smoothed her dress, and walked to the cockpit door. Knocked once, and when the pilot turned around, she said 4 words that changed my life. Open the door now." He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Madam, we are at high altitude. It's extremely dangerous. We can't just—" "Do it!" She snapped, eyes blazing now. He hesitated, then Mao did as he was told. The minute that cabin door cracked, it felt like the plane inhaled and screamed. At the same time, wind rushed in brutal and violent loose papers. Flew my ears. Popped. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed the armrests without thinking. "Mother, what are you doing?" I shouted, my voice barely audible over the roar. She turned back toward me, skirts whipping around her legs, hair blowing wildly, but somehow she still looked completely in control. "You think you can betray me?" she yelled. "You think you can keep what I built with your father?" "I'm your daughter," I screamed back, more out of instinct than strategy. "And I'm your mother," she hissed, taking a step toward me, which means I gave you life, and I can take it back. She kicked me hard right in the stomach. The chair hit my legs. I stumbled backward. There was no floor under my feet, and for an instant I was suspended there in a nightmare, half inside the jet, half out in the sky. Then gravity took over. I fell. The wind hit me like a wall. The cold punched the air out of my lungs. The jet shot upward in my vision, getting smaller. My dress snapped and tore. My braids whipped across my face. I could taste metal and fear. And yet somehow something caught the hem of my dress, snagged on a jagged piece of metal in the doorframe. I jerked to a stop. My body jolted. Pain shot through my hips. My arms flew out, and my fingers scraped desperately along the edge of the opening until I hooked them around a metal bar. I was dangling there, a rag doll in a hurricane, the ocean a distant blur far below my heart, beating so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "Mother," I screamed, "help me!" She walked toward the door and looked down at me, the wind whipping her hair back, her earrings flashing in the light. And in that second, if you freeze it like a frame in a movie, you'd expect to see horror, or at least conflict. But I didn't see either. I saw calculation. For a brief heartbeat, I thought I saw something like regret flicker across her face. But if it was there, it died quickly. "You did this to yourself," she shouted back. And instead of grabbing my hands, she started kicking at the fabric of my dress, knocking it loose from the metal. The sound of tearing cloth mixed with the scream of the wind. My fingers felt like they were breaking. I was begging, pleading, saying, "Please, I'm your daughter. Please." And she just kept going. Then from behind her, the pilot's voice cut through the madness. "Madame, stop, you'll kill her." She paused, breathing hard, eyes wild, then spun back toward the cockpit. "Fly lower." She barked now. The jet began to descend, the clouds thinning slightly, the ocean slowly rising up toward me, still terrifyingly far, but closer than before. "Hold on," the pilot shouted, though I had no idea how he thought that was helpful. What else was I going to do? Let go. My arms felt like they were being ripped out of their sockets. Every muscle in my body was shaking. But I didn't let go. Not then. When we got low enough that the waves looked less like a painting from God and more like actual moving water, I thought maybe this was her twisted idea of a compromise. Maybe she would let me drop just close enough to the sea that I would survive. I looked up at her face one more time. That was my second mistake. She met my eyes, lifted her foot, and kicked my hand. This time there was no second chance. I fell straight toward the ocean, the sky spinning my own scream, tearing my throat. The jet shrinking away like it had never been part of my life. Then the water hit me like concrete. Everything went black. And for a while, there was nothing. When I opened my eyes again, I tasted salt and sand. I was lying on a beach, waves sliding up and down my legs. My dress ripped, my body aching. Everywhere, the sky above me a blur of blue and white, my lungs struggling to decide if they were full of air or water. For a few seconds, I honestly didn't know if this was heaven, hell, or something in between. Then I moved my fingers, felt the grit of sand, heard the real sound of waves slow and steady, and realized somehow I was alive. I tried to sit up, my muscles screaming, and that's when I heard a small, scared voice. Auntie, are you okay? I turned my head and saw a boy, maybe 13, running barefoot toward me across the sand. Big eyes, thin frame expression, stuck between curiosity and fear. I fell. I stammered, coughing spit and seawater mixing. Please, where am I? This is Pearl Island, he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. We saw something from the sky. We thought it was a big bird, but it was you. He helped me up, his arm surprisingly strong for his size, and shouted for his father. That's how I met Joseph. He was tall, dark-skinned, broad-shouldered, with hands that looked like they'd spent a lifetime fighting nets and waves. His face was lined, but his eyes were kind, the kind you can't fake. He led me to a small wooden hut just off the beach, put a dry cloth around my shoulders, handed me a cup of coconut water, and watched me like he was trying to decide if I was real. You're lucky to be alive, he said quietly. God must have some reason for sending you here. She wanted me dead, I whispered before I could stop myself. Who, he asked. My mother, I said. Forcing the words out, she pushed me out of her jet because she wanted my father's money. He stared at me like I had said the sky was green. Your own mother, he repeated slowly, like he was tasting the words. Money can make even a good person do strange things. But to do that, he shook his head, looked away for a second, then back at me. Listen. My daughter, he said, money can turn a heart to stone. I've seen it. But you're still breathing. Don't let her win. You survived for a reason, find it. That night, lying on a mat in his hut, listening to the waves crash outside, instead of engines and arguments, I replayed everything in my mind. My father's smile, his warning source, my mother's face, her foot, the empty space under me when I fell. Anger burned in my chest like a second heartbeat. But under that anger, something else was forming, something harder than fear. I'm not going to die for nothing, I whispered into the dark, staring at the ceiling. If I'm still alive, then maybe God isn't done with this story. And if he isn't done, neither am I. If it were you washed up on a random island after your own family tried to erase you, would you try to forgive, run, or fight? The days that followed on Pearl Island were simple. In a way my life had never been. Chilif and his son Daniel treated me like some lost relative who had fallen out of heaven. Not like a billionaire's daughter. I helped cook. I cleaned fish. I walked barefoot on the sand. I learned the rhythm of a life that wasn't controlled by schedule reminders and security gates. But my mind never stopped spinning. One evening, I found an old radio in a corner of the hut on the top antenna's vent. I fiddled with the dial until a station came through, crackly but clear enough. I was only half listening at first, some music ads. Then a newsreader's voice came on. Calm and official. The late business mogul Richard Collins' empire has been officially transferred to his widow, Mrs. Gloria Collins, following confirmation of his daughter's death in a plane incident last week. The cup slipped from my hands. I turned the radio off with fingers that wouldn't stay steady, sat there, staring at the wall, while everything inside me twisted. She had gotten exactly what she wanted. The world now believed I was dead. The paperwork had gone through. The empire was hers, and she probably slept like a baby. For a minute, maybe longer, I felt like I was underwater again, like the sea had finally done what she wanted it to do, and swallowed me, even though my body was still on dry land. Then I heard my father's voice in my memory, that calm way he would say, "Never let money rule your heart." And something snapped back into place. I walked out to the waterline, the sky heavy with clouds. lightning flickering far off the waves, curling over my toes. And I stood there with my hair in my face and my hands clenched into fists. "Mother," I said quietly, "you can celebrate your little victory if you want, but you made one mistake. You didn't check that I was really gone. I'm alive and I'm coming back." And right here is where the story flips. This is the point where I stopped being just a victim and became something else. Stick around, like we say on YouTube, because what happened next will blow your mind. The next morning, I told Joseph everything. The will, the transfer, the attempt on my life, the news report claiming I was dead. He listened, nodding slowly, then went inside and brought out a small brown envelope, pressed it into my hand. "It's not much," he said, "but you will need it. You can't fight a war with empty pockets." "I can't take this," I protested. "You can," he said, raising his eyebrows. "And you will when you win. You can pay it forward if you lose well. At least you tried." I hugged him. Really. Hugged him the way you hug someone who stepped into a role they were never asked to play, but filled anyway. "Thank you," I said, "for saving me, for believing me, for treating me like a person, not a problem." He smiled. "Go, child. Let the sea carry your courage back where you came from." The boat ride back to the mainland was rough. The waves were high. Every time we hit one, I flinched, feeling that drop from the jet all over again. But this time, I stayed in the boat. This time, I was in control. When the city appeared on the horizon, glittering and loud, my heart tightened, because I wasn't that girl who left it anymore. I wrapped a scarf around my head, tried to blend into the crowd at the port. Took back streets toward the business district, my eyes wide open, now seeing all the things I'd missed before, the gap between the people who built the city and the ones who owned it. Billboards flashed my father's corporation name everywhere, Collins Empire. Glossy pictures of hotels and oil rigs and smiling executives who had probably never ached a day in their lives. I stood across from the main headquarters, staring up at the glass front, and the spinning logo feeling like an intruder in my own life. Then a black limousine rolled up to the entrance. Of course it did. The door opened, and she stepped out. My mother, dressed in gold-laced diamonds, blazing sunglasses perched on her nose. Bodyguards flanking her like she was royalty. Reporters swarmed immediately. Microphones pushed forward, cameras flashing. "Mrs. Collins, how do you feel about inheriting your late husband's empire?" one of them shouted. She gave them the face, the carefully crafted expression of pain and strength, eyes, soft lips pressed together. "It is a painful blessing," she said, at voice full of practiced grief. "I only hope to continue my husband's legacy." I stood on the other side of the street in a borrowed dress and cheap scarf, heart pounding, watching the woman who had tried to kill me talk about legacy. Do you think that's fair? That someone can stand in front of cameras and build a story out of lies, while the person they hurt is forced to hide in the shadows? I turned away before she could notice anything familiar in my posture. Started walking with no real plan, just putting one foot in front of the other, until I saw someone I never thought I'd be relieved to see. Michael. He was walking out of a side entrance to the building, still in his suit, still with those glasses. But with more lines on his face. He had been my father's lawyer for years. The man who always seemed to be in the background of every big decision, solid and calm. If anyone knew what had happened after my death, it would be him. I followed him from a distance through 2 intersections and around a corner until he walked into a quiet coffee shop and took a seat near the window with a newspaper. I went in and, sweaty, ordered something I didn't even taste and watched him open the paper. My face was on the front page again. "Tragic death of Rachel Collins. Confirmed." The headline said, "Daughter of billionaire falls from private jet." He sighed, shoulders dropping, and I watched his lips move as he whispered to himself, "She didn't deserve that." That was enough. I stood up, walked over to his table, and said his name in a voice that shook just enough to be real. "Michael." He looked up, annoyed at first, then confused, then stunned. His eyes went wide, His hand spilled coffee without him even noticing. Rachel, he breathed like the name hurt him. This can't be. You're dead. I sat down across from him, pulled the scarf back just enough so he could see my whole face. I'm very alive, I said quietly. My mother pushed me out of her jet when I refused to sign the transfer papers. I survived, but the world thinks I'm gone. He rubbed his hands over his face, looked around like he expected cameras to pop out of the sugar jars. Listen to me, he said, leaning in, lowering his voice. If this is all true, if she really did that, you are in more danger than you realize. Your mother controls everything right now. Lawyers, police, the board media. If she finds out you're here, she won't. I cut in. Not yet, I need something first. What he asked? Proof. I said I can't just walk into a station and say, hey, surprise, I'm not dead, and my mom tried to kill me. They'll lock me up. I need evidence that Dad didn't just mysteriously die, and that she messed with his will, something solid. He hesitated, chewing on his bottom lip, then let out a long breath. Your father made a second will. He said one he signed shortly before he died, leaving clear instructions to keep everything in your name. It was supposed to replace the previous document, but the day after he passed, that version disappeared from his office. Disappeared. I repeated the word heavy. He nodded. Only one person had full access to that office that day. We didn't say her name. We didn't have to. Can we find it? I asked. Can we prove it existed? It might still be where he hid it. Michael said, his mind already turning. I could see it. Your father liked physical backups. He didn't fully trust digital files. If it's anywhere, it's in his private safe in his old office at Collins Tower. Can we get to it without her knowing? I asked. He looked at his watch, then out the window, then back at me like he was measuring all the risks at once. Tomorrow night, he said. Finally, there's a system update scheduled for the building I still consult occasionally. I know their calendar security cameras go down for 30 minutes. If we're going to do this, that's our window. Meet me at the back entrance at midnight. Right there, sitting in that coffee shop, with the smell of burned beans and sugar syrup in the air that became the plan. 2 people against an empire. What I didn't know at that moment, what neither of us knew, was that one of my mother's bodyguards had glanced through that same window and seen me, his hand already sliding his phone out of his pocket, his voice already whispering, Adam, your daughter is alive. Midnight dragged its feet all day, but it came. Collins Tower at night felt like a different planet, most of the lights off the glass facade reflecting the city. Instead of showing it, the back entrance was quiet, only a faint hum from generators. Michael stepped out of the shadows in a dark coat, nodded once, and opened the side door with a card. Remember, he murmured 30 minutes, no more. Inside, every step felt loud. Even though we were walking on thick carpet, the portraits of my father along the walls looked back at me, smiling in some serious, in others, but always steady, always honest. The weight of his absence was heavier than any security system. We took the service elevator to the top floor. The ride up was silent, except for the soft mechanical whine, my own reflection in the metal doors. Didn't look like the girl at the burial. She looked sharper. Eyes harder. Posture more ready. Your mother hasn't touched your father's office, Michael said, as the elevator dinged. She keeps it as some sort of shrine for the public so people think she's grieving, but you and I both know its image. We walked down a long hallway lined with golden-trimmed doors at the end of it. In big letters was my father's name. I swallowed, pushed the double doors open. The office looked like he had just stepped out for a meeting. Big mahogany desk, leather chairs, papers, neatly arranged bookshelf full of files and books, photo frames on the corner, one of them. A picture of me sitting on his shoulders at the beach sand. On both of us laughing. "I'm going to fix this, Dad," I whispered, my fingers brushing the edge of the frame, I promise. Michael moved behind the desk open drawers and nodded toward the painting on the side wall. A big piece showing a waterfall in some place I'd never actually been. "His safe is behind that painting. He said you remember the code. He changed it after I tried to use it to hide candy," I said, a small smile flickering despite everything. "So, no. Good thing I'm the lawyer then," he muttered, pulling out a small device, keying in numbers. Waiting, the safe beeped softly and clicked. Inside, there were stacks of documents, a couple of gold bars, and one envelope with my name written on it in his handwriting. For Rachel. My throat closed up. I took it with trembling hands, opened it, and unfolded the paper inside. "To my daughter, Rachel," it began. "If you are reading this, something has gone wrong. I have rewritten my will so that the Collins empire remains in your hands, Aunt Gloria's. I fear she has been deceiving me and may try to use the law against you. Trust your instincts. Do not sign anything under pressure, and always protect yourself, Dad." There it was in ink, his voice on paper, his suspicions, his protection. And behind that letter, another document. The updated will signed, stamped valid. "This is it," Michael said, his eyes scanning the pages quickly. "This document alone could strip everything from her. If we get this out with the right witnesses, she loses the empire, the titles, everything. Then tomorrow," I said, folding the papers back into the envelope, "we go public. We don't hide anymore." And that's exactly when everything went sideways. There was a soft sound behind us. A click. The sound a door makes when someone opens it slowly and confidently, not afraid of being seen. We turned. My mother stood in the doorway. She was wearing a long gold robe, like she'd rolled right out of a throne room. Her hair perfectly styled. Even at that hour, two large men in black suits standing behind her. One of them with his hand resting on a gun at his belt. "Well," she said quietly, her lips curling, "the dead has very bad timing." My heart dropped. My fingers tightened around the envelope. "Mother," I said, "I should have known the sea wasn't enough." She went on, stepping inside like she owned the ground under our feet. "You are my blood. After all, hard to kill. But walking back into my building, that was foolish. Gloria." "Stop this," Michael said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The truth is out. We have the new will. The letter, it's over." She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You think one piece of paper will save her?" she snapped. "You forget who controls the judges, the police, the networks. There is no truth except the one I pay for." She snapped her fingers. The bodyguards moved forward. "Mom," I said, anger finally punching through my fear. "You killed Dad's peace. You tried to kill me, and now you want to pretend this is about protection. Your father was weak," she said, eyes flashing. "He thought love and honesty could build an empire. I knew better. I'm the one who made sure what he built didn't collapse. You're just like him, soft, naive, and dangerous to my work." "Rachel, run," Michael hissed under his breath. He moved, stepping forward, as the closest guard lunged at me. The room exploded into chaos. Bodies colliding, furniture, scraping, papers flying. I clutched the envelope to my chest and sprinted for the hallway. "Stop her!" my mother screamed. The second guard came after me, footsteps heavy. I yanked the office door open, shot down the corridor, pushed through the emergency stairwell door, and started running down flights like my life depended on it. Because it did. "Floor 3. She's going down," the guard shouted into a walkie-talkie somewhere above me. My lungs were burning, my legs shaking. But adrenaline has this way of making you do things you didn't know you could. I burst out into the underground parking lot, air smelling like oil and concrete, rows of cars stretching into the shadows. I ducked behind a parked sedan, trying to get my breathing under control envelope pressed to my chest. Then I saw them. Headlights, bright, blinding, snapping on at the other end of the garage. An SUV started rolling toward me slowly at first, then accelerating. I didn't need to see who was driving, but of course I did. Through the tinted windshield, her face focused, enraged, determined. The SUV stopped a few meters away. The window rolled down. You could have had everything she called out, her voice eerily calm over the hum of the engine. And now look at you hiding like a rat in the dark. "I never wanted your money," I shouted back, stepping out from behind the car. Despite every instinct telling me to stay hidden, I want Dad's name to rest in peace. Her expression twisted. "Then you can rest with him." The SUV jumped forward, tires screeching. I turned and ran, feet slipping slightly on the concrete, the envelope almost falling out of my hands. I bent to grab it mid-stride, and the lights from the SUV flooded my vision, growing bigger, closer. Then something slammed into my side, knocking me out of the way. "Michael." We hit the ground. Rolled. The SUV roared past us and crashed into a concrete pillar. Metal twisting glass, shattering an alarm, blaring from somewhere. "Come on." He coughed. "Pulling me up. We have to get out of here before security shows up and decides we're the problem." As he dragged me toward the exit door, I glanced back and saw her through the smoke, stumbling out of the driver's seat. Limping, hair-ruined rage, still burning in her eyes, like the only thing keeping her standing. "You can't run forever," she screamed, voice echoing off the walls. "You are mine, Rachel mine." We burst through the door into the rain, disappeared into the night. After that, things escalated fast. I don't know what I expected. Maybe silence. Maybe for her to lay low and regroup. But the next day, Michael showed me his phone, and there it was, the headline that made me want to throw up. Breaking news. Fugitive Rachel Collins wanted for attempted murder of businesswoman Gloria Collins after violent crash at Collins Tower. She had flipped it. Turned me from victim to criminal with one press release and the right connections. Do you see how fast a story can be rewritten when one side owns all the microphones? We couldn't go to the police. We couldn't walk into any official building and ask for help. So Michael took me to the only person he thought might still owe my father a favor. Mr. Thompson. His office was above a dusty old dockside warehouse, up a narrow staircase that creaked under our feet. The door opened into a room full of stacked newspapers, old cameras, coffee cups, and the kind of controlled chaos that only belongs to people who chase stories for a living. He stared at me for a long time when he realized who I was. Eyes moving from my face to the paper on his desk with my obituary. "Edward's girl," he said. Finally, voice rough, "They said you were gone." I almost was. I replied, but almost isn't the same as dead. We sat, and I placed the envelope in front of him. He read the letter from my father. Then the updated will. His eyebrows rising higher with each paragraph. "This is dynamite," he muttered. "If this is verified, her entire empire collapses. Fraud, corruption, attempted murder. It's not just a scandal, it's a case. That's all I want." I said for the truth to be louder than her lies. He nodded slowly. "We'll publish, but you need to understand, once she knows this exists in someone else's hands, she'll come after all of us, not just you." Before I could answer, the sound of engines and screeching brakes came from outside. Michael rushed to the window, his face darkening. "She's here," he said. "Black SUVs, armed men, same as before." Mr. Thompson didn't flinch. "There's a back way," he said, standing up through the printing room. "Go get on a boat, disappear. I'll stall them." "I'm not leaving you here," I protested. Do you want your father's truth to die in this room with us?" he asked sharply. His eyes fierce. "Go, live. Fight, that's the only way any of this means anything." He shoved the envelope back into my hands, practically pushed us toward the door. The last thing I heard as we ran down the back stairs was the front door crashing open and a voice yelling commands, then gunshots, then nothing. We jumped into a small fishing boat at the dock, bullets hitting the wood around us, splinters flying. Michael got the engine going, and we sped away. As one of the SUVs crashed through the fence and into the water, men shouting, waves spraying up the harbor, turning into a battlefield. On the dock, in the chaos and spray, I saw her again. My mother soaked, furious, her golden robe clinging to her, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear, but didn't need to. "You can't escape me." "Maybe not," I whispered, clutching the envelope like a life raft, "but you won't escape this." We ended up hiding on yet another island not as remote as Pearl, but far enough that her reach took time to get there. Michael found an old hut we shared, food made plans, watched the horizon like it might spit out more SUVs somehow. One afternoon, he pulled out a small satellite phone, frowned at the number on the screen, and answered. It was Evelyn. From Channel 7 Investigations. One of the reporters my father had respected when he was alive, the kind who still cared more about truth than access. She told us what I already feared. Mr. Thompson hadn't made it out of that office he'd bought us. Time with his life. But before they shut everything down, she'd managed to get his hard drive. The one with recordings and files he'd been collecting on Gloria for years. On that drive were recordings of my mother and one of her lawyers discussing how to change my father's death certificate, how to bribe judges, how to clean up the will. That was the twist right there, the moment the scale shifted. We thought the will was our only weapon, but my father's integrity had inspired someone else to keep receipts quietly, carefully waiting for a moment like this. "If we combine your original will with these recordings?" Evelyn said, "We don't just have a story, we have a case, but I can't send this electronically. She's watching everything we have to meet in person." We agreed to meet at Cape Haven by the old lighthouse late, when the fog rolled in and the fishermen went home. Cape Haven felt like a place from a different movie. Rocky shore, lone lighthouse beam, sweeping the water. The air thick and salty. We parked the small rented car and waited near the rocks, me with the envelope, Michael scanning the road. A single car came, headlights cutting through the mist. A tall woman in a gray coat stepped out, carrying a brown messenger bag. "You must be Rachel," she said. Walking toward us, "You look like your father. He was one of the last honest men I interviewed." She pulled a small flash drive from her bag, held it up between two fingers. "This has copies of the recordings and documents Thompson saved." She said, "Once we go public with this, and the will you have, Gloria won't be able to buy her way out, not this time." I took it, feeling the weight of plastic and truth. "Thank you," I said. And then the world broke open again. A gunshot cracked through the fog. Evelyn jerked, gasping, her hand flying to her shoulder. Blood blooming under her coat, she fell to one knee. "Evelyn," I screamed. "Down!" Michael shouted, pulling me behind the car. Men stepped out of the darkness like they'd grown there, guns raised, moving fast and quiet. Black suits, familiar posture. Her men. Always her men. "How does she keep finding us?" I whispered. She traced my call. Evelyn groaned, teeth clenched. I thought I was careful. I wasn't careful enough. Another bullet shattered the back window of the car, spraying glass over us. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and salt. "We have to get to the lighthouse," Michael yelled. "Stone walls height, maybe a signal for help." We ran, all three of us, Evelyn stumbling but still moving up the muddy path toward the tall white tower, our shoes slipping, hearts pounding. We slammed the lighthouse door behind us, turned the lock, heard fists and shoulders hit the wood. Seconds later, "We're trapped," I panted. "Not yet," Michael said, pointing to the spiral stairs up. "They can't shoot what they can't see easily." We climbed the metal steps, ringing under our feet. Voices below us, echoing up the shaft. and then a voice that made my stomach twist. "Rachel." My mother called, her tone almost conversational. "You've humiliated me enough. Let's finish this properly." Mother to daughter. We burst into the glass chamber at the top, the huge light rotating slowly, throwing slices of brightness over the sea, over our faces, over the storm clouds gathering far out. I spotted an emergency kit on the wall. Inside was a flare gun. I grabbed it with shaking hands. Footsteps clanged closer, then the doorway filled. She walked in like she'd just arrived at a gala, hair wild, but still regal clothes, damp from the fog. Eyes burning with a mix of rage and determination. "You really are hard to kill," she said softly. "I'll give you that." "Funny," I replied. Aiming the flare gun, I was thinking the same thing about you. She smirked, then let the mask fall for a moment, the bitterness bleeding through. "You still think truth is going to save you," she said. "World doesn't care about truth. It cares about power. And I have that, not you. You had it." I shot back. "Dad built something real. You twisted it, and now all of this." I lifted the envelope and tapped my pocket where the drive was. "Is going to untwist it whether you like it or not." Her eyes flicked to the flash of plastic at my hip, then back up. "Give it to me," she said. And that's when I saw the gun in her hand. Real loaded. Pointed. Evelyn was leaning against the wall. Blood on her sleeve, watching with dazed eyes. Michael was slightly in front of me, ready to move if she fired. Or what I asked, the flare gun heavy and awkward in my grip. "Or you finally join your father," she said. Her voice almost gentle. "You should have died the first time. I'm just correcting the mistake." The lighthouse groaned around us as the wind picked up. Water pounded the rocks below the beam of light. Slid over her face, then mine, then out the broken glass. "If I die," I said, "it won't matter, because it's too late for you. Thompson's hard drive your recordings. Dad's will. It's not just me anymore. You're bluffing," she snapped. In that moment, I made a choice, not the one she wanted. Not the one. The angry part of me whispered. I could have shot her. Ended her with that flare gun. It would have felt like justice in the moment, but it would have chained me to her forever in another way. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I'm not like you." I turned, aimed the flare gun out through the broken glass at the dark sky, and pulled the trigger. The flare launched out a red streak, cutting upward, then exploding into a burning light that hung over the coast bright loud. Impossible to ignore the kind of signal that says there's trouble, and it's big. "What have you done?" she screamed, panic finally cracking her voice. I called the Coast Guard. I said, "This is over. Mother, you're not doing this in the dark anymore." She lunged forward, slapped me so hard my teeth rattled, grabbed my arm. "You ungrateful child," she shouted. "You're destroying everything your father and I built. You didn't build it," I snapped back. "Tasting blood, how you stole it. And now people will finally see that." Michael stepped between us, raising his hands. "It's done." "Gloria," he said. "The recordings are copied. The will is safe. The signal is out. You can't intimidate every camera." "Not this time. The drive is already on secure servers," Evelyn added. Voice weak but steady. "I sent it before we came. Even if you kill us all here, it's too late." Outside, faint at first, but growing, we could hear sirens, boat horns, the sound of engines cutting through waves. For a brief second, fear showed up in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing the game. Then she made one last, desperate decision. She dropped her hand from my arm, dove for the handgun that had slid closer to the floor. During the scuffle, scooped it up and spun around to point it at my chest. Her hand shaking now. "I gave you life," she screamed, voice cracking. "And I can take it away if that's what it takes to protect what's mine." "Mom, don't," I said, tears finally spilling over. Not because I was scared for myself, but because even now at the end of everything, she still chose this. Before she could fire, Michael tackled her. They crashed into the railing. The old metal groaned. The gun went off. A bullet, shattering more glass. Then the railing gave way. Michael's hand caught the edge of the platform, his body hanging over the drop. His other arm locked around my mother's wrist as she dangled below him. Kicking, screaming, the waves roaring under them, the wind slapping their faces. Michael yelled, "Help!" I dropped to my knees, grabbed his arm with both hands, pulling with everything I had. Below him, my mother looked up at me for once, not as the villain in her own story, but as something closer to human eyes. Wide tears mixing with rain. "Rachel, please," she sobbed. "I'm your mother. Don't let me fall." And this was it. My third choice, and the one no one prepares you for. Not in movies, not in books, not in those little inspirational quotes on Instagram. Do you save the person who tried to kill you twice and risk everything they'll do if they get another chance? Or do you let go and live with that every day forever? I saw flashes in my mind. Her tucking me into bed when I was small. Her dancing with my father in the living room. Her laughing in the car when we used to sing along to old songs. And then the jet door, her foot in my chest, the scream as I fell. "You stopped being my mother," I whispered through my tears, "the day you chose money over my life." Her fingers slipped. She fell into the dark water below her, scream swallowed by the storm. I hauled Michael up onto the platform, both of us collapsing in a heap, breathing hard, hands shaking. Evelyn sliding down the wall to sit on the floor, pale but alive. A few minutes later, the door burst open. Coast Guard officers, investigators, people with badges and radios flooded the lighthouse. Evelyn held up her ID with a bloody hand, explaining through clenched teeth, pointing at the drive at the envelope, at us. I just sat there, leaning against the wall. The flare's light fading outside, the sirens echoing against the cliff, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself cry without holding anything back. 3 months later, the headlines had changed. Businesswoman Gloria Collins, exposed in massive fraud and corruption scandal. Hidden will and secret recordings reveal years of bribery and deception. Daughter survives murder attempt, restores father's name and foundation. They never found her body. Some people said the sea took her. Some whispered. She bribed her way into a new life. Somewhere else under a different name, I don't know. The courts declared her dead on paper, but I think she'd been dead inside long before the lighthouse. Our home changed too. The Collins mansion that had once felt like a stage for other people's performances became something quieter, softer. In the garden by the sea, where the wind is strong but kind, stands a simple stone. Richard Collins, mud. A man of honor, truth never dies. I visit that stone more than people think I do. Sometimes at dawn, when the sky is pink. Sometimes at night, when the city lights are reflecting on the water. That morning, I sat in a white dress, hair loose, holding a cup of coffee when Michael walked up beside me with his own. "The board officially reinstated your father's foundation," he said, "and they voted unanimously. You're the new chair." I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't hurt your face. "Not to build more monuments to his money," I said, "but to fix things." He never had time to fix scholarships, hospitals, legal aid, real stuff. That's what he would have wanted. "And that's exactly what you're going to do." He nodded. "Evelyn's documentary dropped last week, by the way. 10 million views. And counting, people crying in the comments, people angry, people inspired. Maybe the world isn't as numb as she thought," I said. Softly, we watched the waves for a long moment. The same sea that almost killed me. Twice. The same sea that took her. The same sea that brought me to Joseph, and forced me to decide who I wanted to be. "Dad," I whispered, looking at the grave. "I did it. Your name is clean. Your empire is in hands that won't sell it to the highest bidder. Your worst fears about her came true, but your hopes for me did too. I didn't let you down." Michael placed a hand on my shoulder, gentle grounding. "And now," he said, "your story is bigger than just survival. It's about what you do with it. So here's where I turn to you, because this isn't just about one rich family and their drama. It's about how far people will go when they decide money is worth more than blood, more than truth, more than a human life. If you were in my shoes hanging off that jet, standing in that lighthouse, fingers wrapped around the arm of the person who tried to erase you, what would you have done? Would you have saved her? Tried to forgive or let her fall, and trust that some lines once crossed can't be walked back? Do you think children owe loyalty to parents who choose greed over their safety? Or is there a point where family stops being about DNA and starts being about choices? I'm not here to tell you I did everything right. I'm just here to tell you what I did, what I lived, and what it cost. If my story hit something inside you, if you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, or if you've ever had to walk away from blood to save your own soul, I want to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you think I did the right thing. Argue with me if you don't share your own story. If you're ready, hit. Like if you believe truth should never stay buried, just because the liar can afford better lawyers. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that survival can turn into purpose, and subscribe if you want to hear more real stories. Messy ones, painful ones, ones where justice doesn't come cheap, but it comes anyway. Because trust me, behind every perfect family picture, behind every shiny empire, there's a story. And sometimes that story looks a lot like mine.